Welcome to Night Stories from VHS Era. You've arrived at a place where the glow of old television screens, the hum of rewinding tapes, and the softness of forgotten childhood dreams come alive once more. Each night will take a quiet journey back in time to sleepy suburbs, moonlit driveways, warm summer breezes, and the kind of memories that feel just a little too magical to be real. Here you don't need to worry. Just press play and let the night unfold.
Welcome back to Night Stories from VHS Era, where we drift back to a simpler time, quieter world, when the biggest decision of the summer was whether we'd build our secret club under the old maple tree or by the edge of the creek, hidden behind thick bushes and wild honeysuckle. Do you remember how seriously we used to take that mission? How the search for the perfect tree or hidden corner felt more important than anything else in the world? Did you ever look your best friend in the eye and without saying much, just know that this was it? The sacred ground? Stay with me until the end of this story, and I promise you'll relive that golden afternoon when everything fell into place. When we found our headquarters, our fortress, our kingdom. By the time we say goodnight, you'll remember what made those childhood summers feel like magic carved into time. It all started with the heat. Not that punishing, adult kind of heat that makes you wish for air conditioning. No. This was the golden kind. The kind that made the sidewalk shimmer and the scent of cut grass float lazily on the breeze. The kind that soaked into your shoulders. While you stood in your backyard, hands on hips, eyes narrowed in search of destiny. I remember my kids were already a little dusty, the plastic-laced tips chewed from idle nerves. And my shirt was that red and blue Ninja Turtles one I wore way too often. You think this is the summer we finally do it? Jeremy asked. That look again, like he was on the edge of discovery. He always carried his dad's old compass in his pocket like we were explorers or something. I nodded. I didn't need to say much. We both knew. This wasn't going to be like last year's cardboard box fort that collapsed in the rain. This was going to be real. The mission began with a look, that silent agreement, that ancient bond. Formed when two kids decided the world was theirs to build. We didn't have blueprints or Google Earth. We had instincts. And the one rule was simple. The spot had to feel right. We searched for days. After chores and before dinner, between episodes of Batman, the animated series, and long refills of Kool-Aid. The neighborhood felt endless in those days. It's like a map we hadn't finished drawing yet. We checked behind the elementary school, but it was too exposed. The neighbor's shed was tempting, but Mrs. Gilroy's dog barked like a beast guarding. Treasure. There was a corner by the drainage ditch with big slabs of concrete and old graffiti, but it felt cursed somehow. Like the ghosts of forgotten kids lingered there. But then, we found her. She stood at the edge of the park trail, where the mowed grass ended and the wild growth began. It's an old oak, wide and sprawling, with limbs that reached out like welcoming arms. She had scars on her trunk, initials carved in from the past. I remember running my fingers along one C+T89 and wondering if those kids had felt the same thrill. The ground around her roots was dry and soft, and the branches had a perfect platform feel. Here, I whispered. Jeremy didn't. Ask why. He just dropped his backpack, knelt beside me, and started clearing the leaves like it was holy work. Here goes the headquarters. I repeated the words. Here goes the headquarters. We must have said it a dozen times that afternoon, like a chant, like we were casting a spell. Do you remember how sacred it felt to find that one place? Like the rest of the world didn't matter anymore? Why did something so simple feel like the most important discovery in the universe? I think it's because we didn't just find a spot. We found a piece of ourselves. That tree became more than shelter. It became a keeper of secrets. A place where summer could stretch forever and nothing bad could ever find us. We named it the Outpost. We sketched floor plans on napkins, arguing over where to put the lookout post and where we'd stash our Capri Suns and Pogs. we swore to never tell anyone else, not even our siblings. And in our minds, it wasn't just a tree, it was a castle, a watchtower, a spaceship, a hideout from the adult world that didn't understand how big our ideas really were. And the funny thing is, we didn't even build. Much at first, it wasn't about wood or nails or blue tarps yet. It's just being there, claiming it, touching the bark like it was alive and listening to the creak of its branches in the breeze. That was enough. One time, I remember lying on my back in the dirt under the roots and asking, "Do you think we'll always come back here?" Jeremy was up in the branches, legs swinging. "Only if the world doesn't forget how to dream," he said, quoting some movie I can't remember now. But it sounded right. How did we know that tree was the one? Because it spoke to us in a language no adult could ever translate. Because it didn't just hold our weight, it held our trust. It felt hidden, but not too hidden, like it chose us as much as we chose it. And when the sun began to dip low and the cicadas started to hum, we walked home with our heads full of blueprints and our hearts full of something warm and strange, like the beginning of something real. And that night, while the box fan hummed, in my bedroom window and the glow of my Street Shark's nightlight flickered faintly on the wall, I thought about the outpost. And for the first time that summer, I didn't feel like a kid just wasting time. I felt like a builder, a keeper of something important. I didn't know it then, but I was making a memory I'd carry forever. So now that you've heard this first part of the story, do you remember your own sacred spot? That one place only you and your best friend knew about? Where is it now? Does it still exist in the real world? Or just in your dreams? Maybe, just maybe, it's still out there. It's waiting for someone else to say, "Here goes the headquarters." The summer days melted slowly into evenings, every minute filled with secret errands and heartbeats of excitement. I still remember that early morning when the mission began anew. The mission of collecting wood, blankets, and random items from home in secret. The delicate light of dawn would peek through my window as I stealthily tiptoed past the creaking old stairs. The thrill of our clandestine operation was palpable, each moment promising an adventure. I felt as if every stolen board behind the garage was not just scrap wood, but an achievement. A relic of a time when our imaginations transformed even the mundane into something magical. We would convene at our sacred tree that afternoon, our secret outpost, calling to us as if it already knew what we planned to add to its structure. The process began with hushed voices and careful glances at the occasional passing neighbor. I vividly recalled the thrill that surged in my veins when I found an extra-long piece of wood hidden discreetly behind the garage. Every board seemed to whisper promises of hidden rooms and secret levels in our headquarters. I wondered aloud, did you ever feel that every piece of wood had its own soul? And yes, I believe we all shared that feeling. That wood, smooth and slightly worn from its previous life, was now destined to be a cornerstone in our makeshift fortress. My friend Jeremy and Sway would exchange glances filled with unspoken determination as we planned our route through the maze-like backyards of our neighborhood. Along the way, we gathered colorful blankets, old pillows that had lost their fluff in the wash, and various items that we could repurpose, all hidden away from prying eyes. Every discarded item had a story, a memory of some forgotten time. And when they landed in our secret stash, those stories joined together to form the tapestry of our adventure. A chipped mug, a battered metal chair, a bundle of spare nails, and even a flannel shirt that had seen many winters, all found their place in our sacred collection. I often asked, how could ordinary objects carry such wonder? And in every answer, there was the deep truth that wonder can be found in the simplest things. Every trip back home felt like an expedition. I remember the excitement in my heart as I crawled under the barely ajar door, careful to avoid any creaks that might give away my secret mission. My parents were entirely unaware of the little treasures I would claim, each relic chosen as a vital piece for our secret club, the journey from our secret stash hidden behind the garage to the tree. Overgrown with memories was a path laden with obstacles and rewards. With each stride, my senses were heightened. Touch of cool wood against my fingertips, the sound of my own footsteps on cracked concrete, and the faint smell of detergent lingering in the air told a story that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Our collection of items soon grew into a treasure trove that seemed to defy explanation. Jeremy would always carry a roll of bright, patterned fabric, one that his mother used for birthday decorations, while I secured spare pieces of wood that I thought would perfectly extend the platform on which we were planning to create a secret alcove. In our eyes, these items were far beyond their humble origins. A broken toy, a striped rag, a pencil case with stickers peeling off, all became crucial parts in constructing an imaginative world where every nail, every board, every scrap of fabric wove together our childhood dreams. We dared not mention the danger of discovery because, in our minds, the whole process was guarded by an unspoken promise. Our secrets were as safe as the vaults of ancient treasures at times. When the tension of the clandestine nature of our quest built up, I found myself questioning, why did we risk so much for these simple objects? The answer was always the same. We were not simply collecting wood and blankets. We were gathering the fragments of a dream, pieces that would solidify our sanctuary in the branches of that venerable oak. The sound of the planks sliding against each other, the soft swish of fabric in the wind as we carried our loot back, all of it resonated with the magic of childhood. Each board hidden behind the garage, each cloth retrieved, felt like an epic accomplishment, a validation that we were indeed architects of our own secret kingdom. When twilight draped its gentle hues over the neighborhood, we would meet once more at the tree. The fading light made everything appear as though it were touched by a subtle glow of nostalgia, and the gathered items were laid out before us like tokens on a game board, each with its own significance. Jeremy organized the wood with precision, aligning boards as though they were the steps to a hidden world, spread out the blankets, soft and inviting, envisioning a fortress that would soon be more than just a collection of items, but a home for our dreams. In the soft murmur of the wind, I could almost hear the tree itself whispering encouragement, its ancient bark absorbing the dreams of our youthful souls. Reflecting on those moments, I asked myself, why did these small acts of rebellion feel so monumental? The answer lay in the beauty of the secret, the thrill of transforming everyday objects into the building blocks of our own narrative. There was never a moment of doubt among us. Every stolen board, every reclaimed blanket became the evidence of a grand pursuit, a testament to our unquenchable desire to create and imagine. We even constructed a little inventory in our minds, counting each accomplishment and marveling at our ability to turn random leftovers into a magical outpost. Was it not the same magic that made even the simplest glances from a neighbor seem like signals of thrilling conspiracy? And so, under the watchful eye of our sacred tree, our hidden collection grew. It was built from both the sweat of our small adventures and the laughter that filled our secret gatherings. Together we fashioned a modest structure that held not just wood and fabric, but the essence of dreams, the spirit of adventure, and the nostalgia of an era when every moment was savored. The tree, with its outstretched branches cradling our secret haven, witnessed every whispered planning session, every shared smile, every triumphant moment when we discovered a new board hidden behind a garage door. The memories of collecting, those items remain as vivid as the day they happened, and they continue to echo softly in the chambers of my heart. I remember once, when we were securing a particularly sturdy plank, I turned to Jeremy and asked, "Do you think this board was meant for our club? Do you feel its importance like we do?" Jeremy, a confident grin spreading across his face, replied, "Absolutely. It is as if every board chosen like this sings its own story, urging us to build something timeless." His words resonated with me then, as they do now, affirming that every relic we rescued was a fragment of our shared past and a promise for our future. In the glow of that moment, it became abundantly clear how every act of gathering these items was a silent celebration of our audacity to dream in our secret club. Questions often sparked further revelations. I would ask, how did these objects from our homes lead us to become the architects of our destiny? And the answer lay in the simple truth that within each ordinary item was embedded a touch of the extraordinary. Our hearts, filled with hope and wonder, saw potential in every discarded piece. And in doing so, we transformed the everyday into something truly remarkable. Reflect on this as you drift into your own memories. Do you remember the thrill of sneaking around as a child to retrieve a favorite toy or a cherished relic? Each board hidden behind the garage felt like an epic conquest. Every item, regardless of how simple it seemed, was a victory in our heartfelt campaign against the mundane. In that sacred space, every choice was a deliberate act of defiance, a playful renunciation of the ordinary world outside. There was something sacred about the way we held those rusty nails in our palms, the way our small fingers gripped the hammers like we were wielding legendary tools passed down through ancient generations. The scent of warm pine and sawdust lingered. In the air, mixed with the earthy perfume of dried leaves and soil beneath our feet, the tree, towering and steady as ever, stood as our silent guardian while we set to work. We weren't skilled carpenters, not even close. But in our minds, every plank we nailed, crooked or not, was a stroke of architectural genius. Even with boards uneven, slanted, and occasionally splitting at the edges, we looked at our creation with the pride of kings. Jeremy had found an old toolbox in his dad's shed, half rusted and packed with mismatched nails, a dented hammer, and a bent screwdriver. We called it the Sacred Kit. To us, it was more valuable than any toy we owned. I remember opening it for the first time like we were revealing buried treasure. Our mission was clear: build the fort. Build it not for looks, but for legend. So we did. Nail after nail, board after board. Sometimes we missed completely, denting the wood with shaky blows. Sometimes we bent the nails sideways, only to pull them out with all our strength and try again, determined to make it right. Do you remember how difficult it was to get the nails to stay straight? How they always seemed to twist at the last second, mocking our confidence? But we didn't give up. We couldn't. The fort depended on us. I once hit my thumb so hard it turned a deep purple, but I didn't cry, not in front of Jeremy. He offered a freeze pop from his lunchbox as a bandage, and we sat under the tree, me holding my throbbing finger, and him telling me that every great architect had battle scars. I believed him. What made us feel like such visionaries even, though the structure was anything but perfect. It was the vision, not the symmetry. We didn't care about straight lines or polished surfaces. What mattered was what the crooked boards represented: freedom, creativity, something ours. Hammered each board in place, we imagined secret passages, emergency exits, lookout towers. We gave every section of the fort a name. The south wall was made of 2 long planks, one slightly rotted but still sturdy enough to hold our weight. The east wing was really just a plank nailed between 2 low branches with a milk crate for sitting. But to us, it was a balcony with a view over all of childhood. One afternoon, Jeremy brought over an old red curtain his mom had thrown out. We nailed it to the upper corner of the treehouse, and as it flapped gently in the summer breeze, we declared it our flag. The Fortress of Shadows, we called it. I don't know where we came up with the name, but it sounded right. Traced it with a marker onto a piece of plywood and nailed that too, crooked and splintered, just below the main platform. From a distance, it probably looked like a mess. A jumble of uneven boards, all different shades of gray and brown, some sticking out like the limbs of a wild creature. But to us, it was the most incredible thing we had ever built. We believed we were creating something that would last forever, that future kids would discover it years later and whisper stories about the boys who built the treehouse with their own hands. The hammering went on for days. The sound of metal hitting wood became the anthem of our summer. We grew faster, more confident. By the 3rd day, we could almost hit the nails in straight on the first try. Not always, but enough to feel like we were improving. And when the boards held and the structure didn't shake under our weight, we'd exchange those proud glances that didn't need words, the kind of look that said, "We did that." Sometimes we'd just sit there, legs dangling over the edge, sipping juice boxes and watching the sun dip behind the roofs of the neighborhood. We talked about everything and nothing. What we'd do when we grew up, how cool it would be if we installed a trapdoor, whether we could somehow run electricity up the tree to power an old Game Boy. Impossible dreams? Maybe. But they lived freely within the crooked walls of our fort. I often ask myself during those days, does it matter that it's not perfect? And the answer was always no. It was perfect because it wasn't. Because we had built it ourselves. With trembling hands and wild hearts. It didn't follow blueprints or adult logic. It followed imagination. Every off-center nail and tilted plank told the story of two kids who dared to build something just because they believed they could. The flaws were the fingerprints of our adventure, each one as important as the structure itself. The most magical part of all was how the tree accepted our offering. No matter how poorly we aligned the boards or how many times we had to renail, a support beam, it held us. The great limbs seemed to cradle our fort, keeping it balanced and hidden among the leaves. Sometimes lying flat on the platform, staring up through the canopy above, I imagined the tree was proud of us, so that maybe, in all its years, it had never hosted something quite like this. We even made a small trap door, though it was nothing. More than a loose plank, we could slide to the side. Jeremy would sometimes dramatically push it open and drop down to the ground like a secret agent. Once he tore the back of his jeans on a splinter and laughed so hard he couldn't stand up. We made a rule after that: no jumping down unless you were wearing fort pants. It's the oldest pair you owned, and even then, only with supervision. We had rules for everything. No loud talking after dark. Always bring extra nails. Never, ever invite someone without the other's approval. And even with all its imperfections, the fortress began to feel alive, like it changed with us, grew. Alongside us, kept adding to it, expanding here and there, filling it with whatever scraps we could find. Jeremy found an old office chair one day, which became the captain's seat. I added a plastic crate for snacks. Eventually, we had a deck of Uno cards, a flashlight that barely worked, and a comic book collection stashed in a box under the floorboards. We didn't realize it at the time, but we weren't just building a hideout. We were building a memory, a shelter made of dreams and dedication. At night, lying in bed with my fingers still sore from holding nails too long, I'd look out my window and smile, knowing it was there. Our crooked, glorious fortress waiting for us. And even now. So, many years later, I can still hear the faint echo of hammering when the world gets quiet. That sound, clumsy and determined, is the heartbeat of a summer I will never forget. So, if you ever ask yourself, can something uneven, crooked, and flawed still be beautiful? Think of our treehouse. Think of two kids with nothing but a toolbox and a dream, turning mismatched boards into a kingdom. Because sometimes the things that last the longest, the things that mean the most, are the ones built with more heart than skill. It was one of those warm, slow-burning afternoons. The kind that seemed to stretch endlessly, where the light turned golden long before the sun actually began to set. We were sprawled out on the uneven floor of the fort, our backs against the cool wood heads filled with dreams and schemes. Jeremy was chewing on a pencil, staring up at the patch of sky visible through the curtain flap we'd nailed in place last week. And I was holding an old notebook we'd found in his dad's desk drawer, its pages yellowed, lined, and begging to be filled with secrets. "We need rules," he said suddenly, sitting up like the idea had just hit him from the sky. "Yeah," I replied, already scribbling down the title. Official Club Rules, Top Secret. The capital letters made it feel real, important, sacred. This wasn't just a fort anymore. It was a headquarters, a base of operations, kingdom, and every kingdom needs its laws. We took it seriously. Seriously. Each rule was written, slowly, deliberately, followed by a long pause and some quiet reflection. We'd read them out loud after writing each one, repeating the words like we were reciting a magical spell. The first rule was obvious. Rule number 1, no one gets in without knowing. The password? Do you remember what it felt like to come up with something like that? To declare that knowledge of a single word could decide whether someone was in or out. That kind of power made us feel like guardians of a sacred place. The password had to be weird enough to be unforgettable and mysterious enough that no one could ever guess it by accident. We threw around ideas like Laser Banana and Captain Marshmallow, but they all sounded too silly or too easy. And then Jeremy said it. Thunderclap Sandwich. We paused. It made no sense. And that's what made it perfect? It was so strange, so oddly specific that anyone saying it had to be one of us. Thunderclap Sandwich. The moment we agreed on it, it stopped being just a funny phrase. It became the key to everything. The password wasn't just a word. It was trust, loyalty, identity. You either knew it or you didn't, and if you didn't, you had no business being in the Fortress of Shadows. Rule number 2, no adults allowed, ever. We didn't even debate this one. The adult world was full of rules we didn't understand, full of reasons to say no, to ruin the magic with logic and practicality. We weren't about that. This was a place for our stories, our plans, our freedom. It had to remain untouched by grown-up voices and grown-up worries. The tree didn't need permission slips or clean hands. It needed wonder. So no parents, no siblings over the age of 13, and absolutely no teachers. Rule number 3, always bring snacks. We were kids. Snacks were currency. Jeremy once traded a fruit roll-up for a whole box of crayons. I had a drawer at home full of Gushers and Capri Suns I was slowly sneaking into the fort one by one. We decided the snack bin would live. Under the crate chair, always stocked, always shared, but only among members, of course. Rule number 4, you must swear loyalty to the fort. This meant standing up, hand over heart. And repeating the pledge we wrote together, I pledged to keep the secrets, to protect the walls, to climb the tree no matter what calls, to honor the fort with courage and might and guard the password, both day and night. It felt dramatic when we said it out loud, which made it even better. After the first time, we stood in silence for a moment, soaking in the solemnity of what we had just sworn. I looked at Jeremy and whispered, "This makes it official now, doesn't it?" And he just nodded, eyes wide and serious. Rule number 5, no fighting inside the fort, not even over who gets the last juice box. If there was a disagreement, it had to be settled with rock, paper, scissors, 2 out of 3. This rule came from experience. The week before, we nearly dismantled half of our wall, trying to prove who had found the chair first. We added more rules over time, little ones that came from real moments. Like rule number 8, don't sit on the comic box after Jeremy accidentally crushed issue number 2 of Goosebumps. Or rule number 11, flashlights must be turned off before sunset, which we created after wasting an entire set of batteries during a pretend zombie raid. Every rule was born from a story, and every story made our club feel more alive, to keep track. We hid the rule book in a tin lunchbox that used to have the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on it. Colors were faded, the metal dented, but it was perfect. We dug a shallow hole beneath a big root, lined it with a plastic bag, and buried it. Only members knew where to find it. It became our sacred archive. As time passed, the password took on a life of its own. We didn't just say it, we delivered it with drama and flair. Sometimes in a whisper, sometimes with a secret handshake. Other times we'd spell it backward or turn it into a knock-knock joke. What do you call a lightning bolt between 2 slices of bread? Thunderclap Sandwich. And then we'd laugh like we'd just told the funniest joke on earth. The password kept the fort safe, but more than that, it kept our bond strong. There was something thrilling about seeing someone approach and shouting, "Password," and watching them hesitate before smiling and answering, "Thunderclap Sandwich." It was proof they were still one of us, that the magic was still alive. One time, my cousin tried to follow me after dinner. He was only 9 and curious. I saw him lurking near the tree, watching us. I confronted him at the base of the trunk, arms crossed, chin raised. "You can't come up," I said. "Why not?" "What's the password?" He hesitated, then guessed. "Lightning cheese." I shook my head solemnly. "You're close," I said, "but not close enough. Out." We never told anyone who wasn't part of the original pact. That was the rule. The rule above the rules. Because once you give away the magic, it's not magic anymore. Looking back now, I ask myself, why did we take it all so seriously? And the truth is, we knew even then that childhood doesn't last forever. So we clung to every piece of it. The rules, the pledges, the secret words, they were anchors. They gave our worlds weight and shape and meaning. It wasn't about excluding others, it was about building something sacred, something that belonged only to us. Those rules scratched in pencil on crinkled paper are gone now. The lunchbox is probably rusted to dust, the fort reclaimed by the forest, the boards swallowed by moss and time. But the memory of that place, protected by a password that made us feel invincible, still lives somewhere inside me. So if you ever find yourself standing in front of an old tree that feels strangely familiar, and you place your hand on the bark and whisper, "Thunderclap sandwich," don't be surprised if a warm breeze rustles the leaves in reply, because some clubs, the really special ones, never truly disband. After the password had been chosen and the rules carefully inked into our now sacred notebook, it felt like something was still missing, like we'd built the body of something beautiful, but hadn't given it a name yet. And what is a great fort? A true headquarters without a name that strikes awe in the hearts of outsiders and pride in the souls of its founders. Jeremy brought it up one morning, right after we'd finished adding a makeshift railing to the upper ledge. It was made from 2 broomsticks and some garden twine, and though it swayed under the lightest touch, we stood there admiring it like it was a royal balcony, leaned on it carefully, then looked out across the neighborhood with narrowed eyes, as if surveying a vast kingdom. "We need a name," he said. "A name for what?" I asked, wiping my hands on my shorts. "For us? For the club? The fort has a name already. Sure, the Fortress of Shadows. But we need something cool, mysterious. So when people hear it, they know we're serious." And just like that, our afternoon was set. We sat cross-legged on the floor with a notepad in front of us, our heads nearly touching as we brainstormed. A breeze rustled through the curtain, sending faint sunbeams dancing across the planks. The crayons we'd stashed in a metal tin came out, and we each took turns writing down words that sounded powerful, sneaky, or downright cool. The process felt sacred, like naming a star or discovering a hidden island. It had to be right. It had to feel ours. Our first ideas were heavily influenced by the cartoons and comic books we loved. Jeremy liked the Night Warriors. Wasn't so sure. It sounded like a video game title. And we weren't exactly warriors. We were more like spies, adventurers, sometimes even ghost hunters. I suggested Ghost Patrol, and his eyes lit up. We both agreed it had a kind of spooky nobility to it, like we were chosen to protect the tree, to guard it from invisible threats only we could see. But then we kept going. Because, of course, the more names we thought of, the more impossible it became to choose just one. "How about the Silent Shadows?" I said, proud of how mysterious it sounded. "Or the Midnight Scouts," Jeremy countered. "What about the Secret Order of the Oak?" I asked, tapping the notebook. Jeremy scribbled it down, then underlined it twice. We laughed at some of the names. The Nacho Ninjas was one we almost picked just because it made us giggle for 10 straight minutes. Operation Cookie Base was written, circled, then reluctantly crossed out when we agreed it might not age well. The list grew long. Some names were silly, some dramatic, some felt just right but somehow not enough. It was like trying on costumes for our identity. Each one told a different story, reflected a different mood. And the truth was, we were all those things. Brave, sneaky, hungry for nachos. I remember asking, what kind of name makes people wonder what we're up to? Because that was the heart of it. Didn't just want to sound cool, wanted. The name to spark curiosity, to make someone stop in their tracks and say, wait, who are they? We even created categories, spooky and mysterious, strong and brave, fun and weird. Jeremy wanted to combine all three. At one point he said, what if we're the Phantom Rangers? And I immediately pictured a squad of cloaked heroes guarding secret maps and decoding ancient puzzles by flashlight. It was getting dark when we finally made our short list. We were down to 4 options. Ghost Patrol, the Night Warriors, the Order of the Hidden Tree, the Phantom. Rangers, we decided to sleep on it. That night, I lay awake, the moonlight slipping through my curtains, casting pale shadows on my walls. I imagined each name in different fonts, on a banner fluttering above the treehouse. I whispered them out loud to see how they felt in my mouth. I even tried picturing future members asking to join and being told, "Only the Phantom Rangers can enter," or "Welcome to the Ghost Patrol." They all felt right in different ways, like choosing between favorite stories. The next morning, we met back at the fort, both holding folded slips of paper like they were ballots in a secret. Election. We placed them in an old shoebox and shook it ceremoniously. Then, with great drama, Jeremy reached in and pulled out the winner. Ghost Patrol. I grinned. It was my suggestion, but by then it felt like it belonged to both of us. Jeremy nodded slowly, like he was savoring the sound of it. "That's it," he said. "We're the Ghost Patrol now." And just like that, we became legends. In our own minds, at least, we redrew our pledge that very afternoon, replacing the old name with the new one. We even gave ourselves code names. I was Echo 1, and Jeremy was Shadowhawk. We made badges out of cardboard, each with our initials and a tiny ghost symbol drawn with silver marker. Our missions, from that day on, took on new meaning. We weren't just climbing a tree or hiding snacks. We were on Ghost Patrol, guarding the invisible, protecting the realm. Even our rules felt different, stronger, more real. We carried ourselves with more purpose, whispering code words as we moved through the neighborhood, ducking behind fences and peeking through mailboxes like undercover agents. The world hadn't changed, but we had. It was all because of the name. The name gave us identity, unity, a shared story. I often wonder now, why was naming our club so important? Why did we care so much about how it sounded or what it meant? And the answer, I think, is this. Names are the beginning of all great stories. They're the doorway. Once you name something, you bring it to life. Give it shape, meaning destiny. We weren't just two kids with a treehouse. We were the Ghost Patrol. We had a mission, a flag, a past, and a future. And even now, years later, when I pass by trees that look like they might hold secrets, I find myself whispering the name under my breath, just in case the branches remember Ghost Patrol. It still gives me chills. Once the name Ghost Patrol was official, something inside us shifted. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a mission. A headquarters like ours deserved more than slanted planks and a snack crate. It needed personality. It needed color. It needed soul. We didn't just want to climb up into the treehouse. We wanted to enter it, feel it wrap around us like a world apart. So we began decorating. Slowly, deliberately, like curators in a museum that only two kids would ever see. Remember the day I brought the first poster? It was from an old issue of Nintendo Power, folded and creased, with a huge image of Samus from Metroid. The colors had faded from time spent taped to my bedroom wall, but somehow that made it feel even more right for the fort, like it had already lived a life and was ready to start a new one with us. Jeremy helped me staple it to the back wall, right above the milk crate seat. It didn't sit flat, of course. It bubbled and crinkled, the corners curling no matter how much tape we added. But when we stepped back, hands on our hips, it looked like a window into another world. That was our first portal. Soon after, Jeremy brought two more. One was a Batman, the animated series poster with a tiny tear in the bottom corner. The other was from a cereal box featuring Tony the Tiger dressed like a superhero. We didn't even like that cereal, but the art was bold, and we decided Tony could be our unofficial mascot. We called that wall the Hall of Heroes. It was a place to remind us who we were inspired by and what kind of greatness we might reach ourselves. But posters weren't enough. We wanted the kind of place that felt like it could turn on the moment we stepped inside, so we added flashlights, dozens, eventually. They weren't all functional. Some were out of batteries, others flickered when you moved too fast, and a few had lenses so scratched they cast strange patterns on the wall. But that made them magical. It kept them stashed in random spots, taped to beams, tucked behind old pillows. When night came and the sun dipped below the rooftops, we'd switch them on one by one, like lighting a series of torches. Some cast soft glows, others sharp circles. The whole fort lit up like an underground bunker. One flashlight, small and green, became our official signal light. We used it to blink messages to each other from the ground if one of us was keeping watch from above. 2 quick flashes meant come up. 3 slow ones meant stay hidden. We practiced the code like a secret language, and it always worked until Jeremy's little brother copied us one evening and started blinking from his bedroom window using a toy lightsaber. That night, we rewrote our code entirely. But what truly made the place ours more than the posters, more than the lights or the candy stoss, it started innocently enough. Fun dip in an empty shoebox, sleeve of Oreos hidden under the fabric-covered armrest we'd rigged from an old lawn chair. But like everything else, it grew. Jeremy smuggled in 2 full packs of fruit by the foot. I brought Skittles sealed inside an old pencil pouch. We called that pouch the rainbow bag. Once, we even managed to sneak in an entire pack of Push Pops stored in a hollowed-out compartment under the comic book crate. Every item was hidden with care, labeled dated, and most importantly, -remembered.do. You remember what it felt like to discover something you had hidden weeks earlier? To lift a corner of fabric and find a chocolate bar you had forgotten you saved, still intact, still yours? It was like finding treasure that your past self left for your future, and in that quiet joy, there was something more than sugar. There was belonging, anticipation, the reminder that even time couldn't steal the magic. We stored up there. We even started naming the hiding spots. There was the nest, a hollow between 2 beams where we kept anything with caramel. The vault was an old metal lunchbox with a broken latch that stayed wedged in a corner near the east wing, and the black hole, a narrow space behind a loose board. It's where we placed anything we didn't want found, not even by each other. We made a rule that if you hid something in the black hole, you had to leave a note behind in the rule book stating only that an item has been sealed. No further details allowed. It gave the place a sense of mystery, of infinite depth, as if the tree itself could hold secrets beyond even our own invention. The old wood of the fort gave off a constant scent-ry, cracked, soaked in sunlight and time. Sometimes it smelled like damp leaves or warm dust, sometimes like pencil shavings and bubble gum. And yet, no matter how long we stayed up there, surrounded by old posters, flickering flashlights, and melting candy, it never felt gross. It felt right, familiar, like childhood had a scent. And it lived in that trush. We hung wind chimes from a nail above the main window, even though they barely rang unless the wind was strong. We taped comic strips from the Sunday paper to the underside of the upper platform, so if you laid down and looked up, it was like reading the ceiling. We pinned Pokemon cards in the corners like portraits of our top generals. Charmander stood. Watch over the snack bin, Pikachu was our gatekeeper. Bulbasaur guarded the vault. One day we brought an old battery-powered radio. It barely worked. Most of the time all we got was static, but once in a while it would pick up a station playing oldies. Not 90s hits, but stuff from the 70s or 60s. It felt timeless up there. And when the music came on, even through the fuzzy signal, we didn't skip it. We listened. Sometimes we'd hum along, tapping our feet on the floorboards. Other times we'd sat in total silence, just letting the sound blend with the rustling leaves. Jeremy once said, "If someone finds this place 50 years from now, they'll think we lived here." I smiled and replied, "In a way we kind of do." And we did. Every crayon drawing on the walls, every flashlight dangling from a nail, every corner stuffed with sweets or comics or inside jokes, we lived in it all. Even now, I wonder how could something so fragile feel so eternal? The answer, I think, lies in the details. It wasn't just wood and nails. It was the sticker we stuck on the railing and laughed about because it wouldn't peel straight. It was the flashlight with the fading beam that still worked when nothing else did. It was the poster that kept falling until we finally gave up and let it hang crooked, calling it abstract art. Every poster told a story. Every candy wrapper buried in a hiding place was a time stamp of a day we spent dreaming instead of doing homework. And even the smell, that sweet, musty, dash with dash and dash fun dash dip smell, was a part of the world we built together. Sometimes I close my eyes and try to remember it exactly. The soft crunch of the floor as we moved. The flicker of flashlight shadows dancing across comic pages. The warmth of a blanket slung over our shoulders as we read our newest rules out loud by dim light. the glow-in-the-dark stars we stuck to, the ceiling with chewing gum just to see if they'd really work. They didn't, but we kept them anyway. Those decorations didn't just make the place magical, they reminded us that it already was. There were days in the fort when nothing much happened. No new rules were written, no posters were added, no new candy was smuggled in. But somehow, those days became the ones I remember most clearly now. The quiet ones, the in-between ones. When we didn't need to build or fix or plan, we just were. Sitting there side by side in a silence that felt warm instead of empty, the kind of silence that holds space for anything to happen, a thought, a laugh, a secret, and never rushes you. The sunlight would filter in through the gaps in, the boards painting slow-moving stripes across the walls and floor. We could hear distant lawnmowers humming, birds chirping. Sometimes even the faint buzz of a plane tracing its line across the wide summer sky. And in that stillness, one of us would usually break the calm with a question that seemed to come out of nowhere. Do you think we'll still be friends when we're like 30? Jeremy asked that one while laying on his back, staring up. At the comic strip ceiling, I remember turning toward him slowly, unsure how to answer. 30 felt like science fiction, like flying car age. Yeah, I said finally. We'll have to meet at the fort once a year, even if we're old. Deal, he said, sticking out his hand for a pinky promise. We sealed it quietly, without needing to say anything more. That was how the deepest things often happened. Up there, not through long speeches or serious voices, just dot, dot, soft words, said when the light was right and the mood felt like melted caramel. No pressure, no pretending. Other times, it was the opposite. The fort would erupt into the kind of laughter that made your face hurt. The kind that came in waves and left us breathless, red-faced, and gasping for air between every fit. I once tried to eat a piece of taffy while telling a joke, and it got stuck to the roof of my mouth, making my voice sound like a cartoon. Jeremy lost it. He laughed so hard he accidentally knocked over the crate of flashlights, which all rolled in. Different directions, like scared animals. That made me laugh harder. He tried to say something, choked on his Capri Sun, and sprayed fruit punch through his nose. It collapsed. Stop, I can't breathe. Holding his stomach. Me neither, said, wiping tears. From my eyes, we must have laughed for 15 minutes straight. It's over nothing, but also over everything, because it felt like the whole world was in that treehouse with us, and it was funny. Gloriously funny. The kind of funny that doesn't need an audience. Just a friend who's tuned into your exact brand of weird. Then there were the stories. Oh, the stories. Jeremy would spin these wild improvised tales. Ghost encounters, treasure hunts, alien, sightings. Sometimes I'd join in, adding dramatic voices or pretending the floorboards were lava. We created whole characters, entire mythologies. We had names for the squirrels that visited the branches near the window. We made up a rivalry. With a group of imaginary spies called the Dust Crows who were always trying to steal our secrets, we even kept a fake mission log, complete with coded entries written in backward letters. One evening, while the sky turned to lavender and the streetlights began to glow, we talked about what scared us. It's not in a dramatic goosebumps way, but honestly, Jeremy said he was afraid of losing his dog someday. I admitted I was scared my parents might get divorced, though I wasn't sure why I thought that. It just lived in the back of my mind. It's like a shadow that didn't always move. I think grown-ups forget how scary stuff can be, Jeremy said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. That's why we have the fort. Nothing scary here. And it was true. That treehouse, those wooden walls held our laughter, our fears, our questions, our weirdness. It was the only place I could say something like, I think the stars are listening, and not get a weird look. Jeremy would just nod and say, I think so too. We had this game where we'd try to sit in silence for as long as possible without speaking, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. Just to see how long we could go before the silence became its own kind of conversation. I remember once we made it 10 full minutes, eyes closed, listening to the sounds around us. The breeze through the leaves, the distant bark of a dog, a bike rolling down the sidewalk below. And when one of us finally whispered, "You still there?" It felt like the silence had turned into a kind of invisible glue that held us tighter than words ever could. I wonder now, was that treehouse really magic? Or did we make it magic by showing up as our truest selves inside it? The answer feels like both, because I've never found another place quite like it. A place where you could cry and not be told to stop, where you could say something ridiculous and be met with wild applause, where belly laughs and quiet fears shared the same air. Comfortably, peacefully, like old friends. I remember one rainy afternoon, the kind where the sky turns gray and soft thunder rolls somewhere far off. We brought up an old blanket and sat together, listening to the rain tap gently on the roof we'd nailed together ourselves. Didn't speak much. Jeremy was reading a choose-your-own-adventure book. I was sorting through a box of stickers I'd collected from cereal boxes and vending machines. And every now and then, he'd read a passage out loud and ask what I would choose left. Path or right path, climb the tree or enter the cave. And we'd debate it for a bit, smiling at how high the stakes felt. That was the thing. Everything felt big in the fort. Every whisper, every joke, every shared snack. They mattered. Stuck. We left pieces of ourselves in that space, little bits of laughter. Stories, echoes of thoughts we didn't even understand yet. And in return, it held us with a kind of kindness I've rarely felt since. If silence could be an adventure, that's where it happened. So when people ask me what made the fort so special, I don't say the posters or the password or even the candy stashes. I'd say it was the way time felt different inside those walls. Softer, slower, like we could bend it, stretch it. Be it deep talks, wild giggles, or nothing at all. Let me know when you're ready. For Chapter 8, or if you'd like to change anything in this one. There comes a moment in every secret society, even the messy, wonderful kind built on tree limbs and laughter, when boundaries must be made clear. For us, it came after one too many close calls, one too many suspicious footsteps on the one ladder, and one very near disaster involving a spilled box of jelly beans and Jeremy's 6-year-old brother. Max, it had started out innocently. Max was curious, as younger siblings always are. He'd circle the base of the tree like a cat, pretending not to be interested. He'd hum loudly nearby, toss a ball just a little too close, or pretend to ride his scooter past again and again. We pretended not to notice until the day he tried to climb. Jeremy spotted him first. I was halfway through retelling the latest Ghost Patrol mission from earlier that morning, complete with exaggerated hand gestures, when Jeremy froze. He whispered, "Do you hear that?" I listened. There it was, the unmistakable creak of the lower rungs. We rushed to the hatch and peered out. There he was, one tiny sneaker already reaching for the second plank, small hands gripping the sides of the ladder like he belonged. "Max!" Jeremy yelled. Max froze. "I was just... looking," Max said innocently. But there was a glint. In his eye, that dangerous combination of curiosity and persistence only little brothers seem to master. "You can't come up," Jeremy said sternly. "Why not?" "Because you're not in the Ghost Patrol? I can be. You know, Max, you're too little and... you don't know the password." Max pouted and climbed down slowly, dragging his feet on purpose so each step took forever. That day we knew. It was time. We needed an official line in the sand, something unmissable, unmistakable, unbreakable. That's when the idea for the sign was born. We made it together the very next morning. We scavenged a decent-sized piece of cardboard from the garage. It used to be the back of a notepad, and it still had old glue stuck to one edge. With a thick black marker and maximum focus, we printed the words in capital letters. "No siblings A-Lo-Lo" just below it, in red crayon for extra effect. We added, "This means you, Max." We took a moment to admire it before we posted it. It was beautiful. Clear, final. Jeremy climbed down with a hammer and 2 nails in his pocket, while I leaned out the window of the fort with the sign in hand. He secured it to the tree trunk, just a few inches to the right of the first rung on the ladder. "You couldn't miss it. That was the point." "Think he'll listen?" I asked. "Nope," Jeremy said. "But at least now we have proof." And proof we needed, because not even a full day had passed before Max returned. He stood at the bottom of the ladder and stared up at the sign for a long time. We watched from the hatch, holding our breath. He tilted his head, then squinted, lips moving silently as he sounded out the letters. Then he crossed his arms and shouted, "I can read, you know?" Jeremy leaned out and replied calmly, "Then you know what it says?" "It's not fair," Max cried. "It's the law," Jeremy said, as if we hadn't written it ourselves just the day before. That sign became more than a warning. It became our symbol of resistance, our stand against the chaos of younger siblings. Max was clever, though. Started sending bribes up in a plastic bucket we'd once tied to a rope to haul supplies. A juice box, a trading card. One time, a single grape-flavored Jolly Rancher with a tiny note that said, "Let me up," just for 5 minutes. We debated it once, I'll admit. Candy was tempting. But we stayed strong. No siblings, I reminded Jeremy. No exceptions. He agreed. But of course, kids like Max don't give up easily. One afternoon, while we were reorganizing our candy stash behind the nest, we heard it again, the ladder creak. But this time, it was followed by a loud thud and a sharp yelp. We rushed to the hatch and found Max sitting at the bottom of the tree, rubbing his elbow, his eyes glossy with tears. He hadn't made it past the second rung. We climbed down fast. Helped him up, checked for scrapes. He was okay, just scared, just bruised. But something shifted in that moment. He looked smaller than usual, softer. He wasn't the annoying spy anymore. He was just a little brother who wanted to be a part of something he didn't understand. As we walked him back to the house, Jeremy whispered, "Do you think maybe we were too mean?" I didn't answer at first. I was thinking about all the times I'd stood at the edge of something bigger watching from the outside, just wondering what it would feel like to be invited in. The next day, we made a new sign. It was smaller, written on a sheet of paper from our comic book sketch pad. It read, "Siblings may enter only if blindfolded and sworn to say." Ian Suey posted it just below the original Max. Never tried to climb again. But he did send up a note once. Rolled tightly and slipped into the bucket. Said, "I like the new rule. Still cool, even if I can't come up. Love, Max." We added it to the rule book, right after rule number 19. No rewinding a memory until you've lived it all the way through. Years. Later, I found that sign in a dusty box in my parents' garage. The cardboard had gone soft, the ink faded, but the words were still there. And seeing it, holding it again, I smiled because it reminded me of how fiercely we protected our space. Not to shut people out, but to hold something sacred, a space. Where the rules were ours, where the world made sense, Max got his own clubhouse eventually. Smaller, lower to the ground. We even helped him build it. And one day, he put up his own sign in big, shaky letters. No, Big Brother's Alaloden. I couldn't help but laugh, because maybe that's just how magic works. You guard it when you're inside it. And when you're ready, you help someone else build their own. There were days when time seemed to stop entirely inside our fort. Those long summer afternoons stretched out in ways I didn't understand until years later. We'd climb up the ladder just after lunch, armed with comic books, snacks, and whatever small treasures we'd found that morning. Once inside, the world beyond those planks and nails faded away, like it belonged to someone else entirely. Do you remember that feeling of being so completely absorbed in a place that hours slipped by unnoticed? That sense of timelessness that only childhood can hold. I remember sitting on the floorboards, leaning against the crate we'd filled with supplies. While Jeremy was busy sketching out new rules in the notebook, the sun was warm through the cracks in the wood, making patterns on the floor that moved slowly as the afternoon light shifted. We didn't watch the clock. We didn't need to. The only way we knew time was passing was when the light changed. The bright, clear sunlight of midday softened into a warm orange glow, filtering through the gaps in the planks and making everything look like it was glowing from within. That orange light was our signal. It was the universe's quiet reminder that the day was slipping away, but we could stay a little longer. Just a little. Sometimes we'd fall into deep conversations about everything and nothing. What if ghosts really lived in the woods behind the fort? Would we be able to see them? Could we protect each other? Jeremy told me once that he thought The tree itself was alive, like a sleeping giant watching over us. I like to imagine that too, that the branches and leaves whispered secrets to one another, sharing stories of all the kids who ever played there. Other times the fort was filled with laughter, high-pitched, silly, the kind that made your stomach hurt. We'd tell bad jokes, do impressions of our favorite TV characters, or just make funny faces at each other until one of us broke down laughing. Those moments were the best kind of magic because they made the space feel alive, like it had a heartbeat. You remember how the smell of old wood mixed with the sweetness of candy and the faint mustiness of blankets could make a place feel so comforting? Even now, the scent takes me back to those afternoons spent curled up, watching the world go by through our secret window. We'd look out at the neighborhood, the rooftops, the distant park, kids riding bikes on the sidewalks, and know that this fort was our world within the world. One particular evening stands out in my memory. We had stayed up there for hours, playing card games by the light of a single flashlight, the batteries nearly dead. Outside, the sky slowly turned shades of pink and purple. The air cooled, and the sounds of evening began: the chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. At some point, neither of us said a word. We just sat, watching the sunset through the cracks in the wood. The orange light pooled on the floorboards and wrapped around us like a soft blanket. It was a quiet moment, but full of something I didn't have words for back then. Peace, maybe, or belonging. I think what made those hours so special was the feeling that nothing else mattered. The worries of school, the chaos of home, the noise of the world, they all melted away. Up there in that small space between earth and sky, we were free. Free to dream, to be ourselves, to build a world that belonged only to us. Sometimes I wonder if we could ever go back and relive those moments. To climb that ladder one more time and feel the orange sunlight through the wooden slats. To hear the creak of the tree as it swayed gently in the breeze. To sit shoulder to shoulder with a friend and watch the sun sink slowly below the horizon. Would it feel the same? Do we remember the laughter, the secrets, the silent adventures that filled that fort? Maybe the best part is that we carry those moments with us, like little glowing embers tucked away inside, warming us on days when the world feels cold. The sunset light through the treehouse is a memory I come back to often, especially when I need a reminder that time can slow down, that magic can live in the smallest places, and that some friendships are timeless. So, next time you see the sun dipping low, casting its orange glow, try to remember those hidden forts, the secret clubs, and the feeling of being somewhere no one else could reach. It's a feeling that never really leaves us. It waits quietly, just like that orange light, ready to remind us of who we are at our best. Sometimes I find myself thinking back to that little fortress hidden among the branches, and the memory feels as vivid as if I were climbing up the ladder again. It wasn't just a fort made from uneven boards and blankets or a cluster of snacks, secreted away in crevices. No, it was something far greater. It was freedom, a kind of freedom that only childhood knows, unburdened by schedules, worries, or expectations. It was friendship in its purest form, a bond sealed by whispered secrets and shared adventures. It was the essence of a childhood that felt endless, as if the sun might never set on those golden days. Do you remember how certain places become a part of your soul? Like they leave an imprint on the very fabric of who you are. That treehouse was one of those places for me. It was a sanctuary where time slowed, where imagination took flight, and where every scraped knee or inside joke mattered more than anything else in the world. It was the stage for dreams, the backdrop for endless stories, the headquarters of a secret club that only we could enter. Even now, years later, when the world feels too fast or too loud, I close my eyes and return to that space. I can smell the faint scent of old wood mixed with candy wrappers, hear the soft creak of the ladder underfoot, feel the gentle sway of branches above me. It's a refuge I carry in my heart, a reminder of simpler times, of days when the only thing that mattered was the next laugh, the next whispered plan, the next shared moment under the fading light. What made that fortress so special wasn't the wood or the nails or even the blankets we draped over the walls. It was the feeling it gave us, the way it made the impossible seem possible. the way it held our dreams and fears and laughter all at once. It was a place where we learned what it meant to be brave, to trust, to belong. I think that's why those memories stay with us for a lifetime. Because they capture something we all chase as adults, the pure joy of being fully present, fully ourselves, without pretense or fear. That little fortress, built with uneven nails and wild hearts, was more than a hideout. It was a symbol of childhood's magic, a beacon of friendship, a testament to the power of imagination. So when you find yourself longing for those days, remember that the fortress is never far away. It lives in the stories we tell, in the laughter that bubbles up unexpectedly, in the quiet moments when the world slows down enough for us to hear the whispers of our younger selves. It lives in you. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to the Ghost Patrol's headquarters, to the secret club where time stood still and childhood lived loud and bright. I hope this story brings you a sense of peace and nostalgia and reminds you that no matter how old we get, those moments of pure magic are never truly gone.